Welcome everyone to the panel of diverse faculty. This is the first in our series of 5 panels where we will be talking through diversity issues. Our first today will be a discussion surrounding BIPOC faculty and how to find spaces for support if you are BIPOC faculty, how you hold space for diverse students, how you provide consultation for non-BIPOC faculty, what that looks like, and maintain your passion for the work, even while you may be experiencing battle fatigue in that moment and have experienced 2020 along with everyone else and have have your own reactions to that. And so hopefully our discussion today will be supportive of the efforts that you are making and we'll answer questions that you have around any of these. My name is Dr. Sonia Sutherland. I am an associate professor at Richmont Graduate University in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been in the field of counseling since 1998 and in faculty roles since 2014. At Richmont, I'm the director of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and a dean of assessment, planning, and accreditation. My 3 panelists who are here with me, I'll allow them to introduce themselves as well so that you'll get to know who they are.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Dr. Amber Nelson. I'm a clinical psychologist. I work as an associate or assistant professor at George Fox University in our Doctor of Clinical Psychology program.
I'm Dr. Sean D. Smith. I'm an assistant professor and coordinator for clinical field experience in the Department of Counseling at North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina. I've been a professional counselor now for over 25 years, a clinical supervisor for over 23, and a professor teaching in classroom for 21. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone in this esteemed panel.
Dr. Suarez.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Suarez. I am the director of the PhD program in Counselor and Supervision at Walden University, as well as the research coordinator. I've been kind of the same as you guys. I've been a counselor educator since 1997. Have taught both master's and doctoral, both face-to-face, face-to-face, hybrid, and online. Been a supervisor through that time. Love this career. And continue to train students to broaden our perspective and our influence in the world.
I should say I am early career, so I have been in the field licensed for 3 years now, and I'm going into my 2nd year. I'm just in my 2nd year of teaching, so a year and a half in, and it has been quite the year to start to join academics.
Indeed. Well, I'm glad that the 4 of us are together working on this, so let's go ahead and jump in. Oh, before that, I thought that it would be really great as well for us to give our cultural background, because we do have different cultural backgrounds, and I think that also influences how we think about any and all of these questions. So my cultural background, while I was born in Brooklyn, New York, my mom was Cuban and my dad Jamaican. So I consider myself a Cuban American. That's my own word that I have coined to describe myself. And so a lot of my perspective, life experience really has been Caribbean based. And that is the frame that a lot of what I think about comes from.
I grew up, I'm originally from Southern California, but I grew up in Southern Oregon in a really small rural community. I was the only person of any color, pre-K through 12, graduating class of 18. So really small, very white community of currently 89% white. and then other. And my background is I'm half Black and half Italian. And so I consider myself, I identify as a Black woman, but I have a very strong connection to my Italian heritage and the understanding of a biracial identity and identity development.
And I identify as being African-American, Black American. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, born and raised, minus the military stints. However, I say I was born in the North, but I was raised South because all of my family members are from Virginia, Alabama, and South Carolina, and Kentucky. So I have a strong Southern influence, both from an urban area and rural area. I grew up in a small town. However, my second home for me was Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In the summers, I was with my grandmother, and she lived in Pittsburgh. So that's how we did vacations. We were blessed to have many grandparents. So we spent time in the city, we spent time on the farm in the summer, beginning of Father's Day, and then coming back the first week in August. So, and then I've been in, I'm a veteran, so I was in the military for 15 years and traveled around the world, mostly in the Middle East and Northern Africa, and then also in Central and South America. So,
do you speak Spanish?
I do not, and I should.
Just
You're
hearing
not
that.
alone. I should too. With a Cuban mother, I don't know a lick of Spanish, which is terrible.
I actually, my mom's from Nicaragua, and both my grandparents came from Spain, and so I identify as a Latina, and we spoke Spanish at home until I went to kindergarten. But so my Spanish on a good day, if I'm around a lot, is good. But then if I don't speak, like I haven't since March, basically, it's a little harder. But anyway, that's how I identify. Yeah, I don't know if I need to say more about that. Yeah, my family get-togethers were always in Spanish when I was younger. And it was the cousins that spoke English, but all the adults spoke Spanish.
Gotcha.
And that's,
Gotcha.
I never understood why people would make fun of me about the foods we ate and stuff. And I've gone through the typical, and it's like, no, this is delicious. What do you mean you don't like, beans and rice or platanitos or, kind of some of that stuff. Carnita ni nicaragüense. Anyway.
Yeah, yeah, totally get that. Totally get that. All right, so then let's jump into our material. The first thing we're looking at today is how to hold space for diverse students as a BIPOC faculty. And the languaging of this particular discussion point is really important because I think as BIPOC faculty, requests for our time and our thoughts and our advice don't just come from BIPOC students. They come from all students of all backgrounds and for differing reasons, right? And so what I've experienced with, for example, non-BIPOC students is often a request for space for them to process their own response to, in a lot of cases, being faced with realities that they really would prefer not to be true, right? And they're coming face to face with things often for the first time. So my university is a conservative Christian university, small, predominantly white. And so I am the only faculty of color, administrative color as well on staff. And so I get all of it from them. And what I see is that whenever they come out of social and cultural or begin social and cultural, and when they are faced with 2020 in a way that can't be denied, right? It's like a jarring of their world concept, right? It's almost a dismantling of some of the things that they've been taught to be true and now seems otherwise. And then they're trying to put that together with their faith and what they've been taught in church and how they should respond to these things, all of that, right? And so for them, right, my role is different than it is for my BIPOC students who come for support and have known all of these things as true, as evidence in their own lives and their own realities, and experiencing their own level of racial battle fatigue that they don't have language for yet. Many of them don't really know, have never heard of battle fatigue, have never heard of racial trauma, interestingly, right? And so how do we provide support looks different depending on who's sitting in front of us, right? Yeah. So what has been your experience around some of this, and what have you done to support both non-BIPOC and BIPOC students? Dr. Smith, we'll just start with you.
Well, can I hold space here for a moment before I get in? And I wanted to just share with everyone, because we talked about this, the term we're using, BIPOC versus minority. And just want everyone to know, this term, I think, has been maybe the last 24 months. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And the reason why we are choosing to use this title to identify us is to empower the language. We want to move away from looking and sounding less than. So the term of minority anything is something that we are choosing to put down and move to language that empowers us and does a better job in identifying us. So I just wanted to put that out there. Ladies, did I leave anything out?
I would say, just to clarify, that BIPOC is Black and Indigenous people of color, is what the acronym refers to.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, thank you. So, knowing all of that, and coming here and talking about holding space for students, all students, the first piece is just being present, all right? First piece is being present. As I indicated, I'm currently at North Carolina A&T, and for those that do not know who A&T is, it is a historically Black college. By the way, the #1 historically Black college in the country, produces the most Black engineers in the world. Anyhow.
Toot that horn, go ahead.
So, and this is my second year here. So we're all the same, if that makes sense, compared to a PWI. So I've been in both. So here, it's just as important for me to be present and visible and doing the work that I do so that they can see a role model that's actually doing it. Because we have many students that are first generation that have no clue what college is about, had no clue how they actually got here. And I'm not trying to be funny, but I think first generation, you guys understand what I'm saying. I was a first generation college student. And then we have individuals, their legacy. Their families have gone to college, they were raised in it, it's generational, they know about it, they understand it. So being visible is the first piece. And then the mentoring begins, so to speak. Informal. And when I say mentoring, on any level, for anything. It could be the dad away from home type mentoring, or it could simply be the faculty member that's there to listen to issues that are going on just in the dorm, or specifically academic, all the way around. When I was in a PWI setting,
which, by the way, predominantly white institution for those that might not know our acronyms. Sorry.
Yes, no, not a problem. Imagine being, as Dr. Sutherland indicated, I was the only in many of those settings. Definitely in the college that I was in. And I'd say there was 6 of us on campus. So I've been in that. Actually, our president at the time was an African-American male. He was actually the first African-American male in a state system in Pennsylvania, president. And of course, they got us confused. And we look nothing alike. So, but even at just being, even in that setting, being visible, being present is even that much more. So when we're talking about holding space, in those settings, it was probably more the informal than the formal. And the reason I'm saying that is I took the position that we need to talk about some things, kind of like that concept of family business. And we only talk about things at the dinner table or over the card game, the spades, the pinochle, the biz whiz, whatever we do, to really see what's going on with them. So oftentimes it was lunch off campus. Oftentimes it was a group of individuals to my house for watching a football game and just talking about life and what's going on. So just being present in all those spaces so that they understand that I care and you're important. And my experiences has shown me once students can see that, the rest is easy because the relationships developed at that point. So that's I'll just stay there. I'll leave it there. But it's just really being visible and being present.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I would totally agree. Being visible, remaining present is huge. So I'm at George Fox University in right outside of Portland, Oregon, and it is a predominantly white institution. It's a PWI. Our department, we actually have 3 folks of color. Now myself, our director of diversity is Winston Segobin, who has a Caribbean Indian background, and we just hired a new faculty who is a Black woman from Southern California. So for us being a fairly small department and a small predominantly white institution, I'm really proud of the diversity, and we're continuing to work on expanding that. So I'm really proud of that expansion in the last couple of years here. So I think that right now what it's meant to hold space for my BIPOC students has been interesting because I'm still a new faculty. We haven't had a whole lot of faculty of color and representation in our department. It's been Dr. Segobin kind of on his lonesome doing his thing for a really long time, and he's done a beautiful job. And I think that because it's been him on his lonesome for a long time, our BIPOC students in particular have found ways of coping and found ways of creating space, oftentimes outside of the department. And so, of course, within the things and what has been there before, but I think because there was such limited resources, they've also found ways to kind of navigate that space. And so me now coming in, has been a lot of having to do a lot of groundwork and reaching out and actually like trying to bring students into my office and as much as I can in the year that I started of a pandemic, which again has posed its own challenges, which has also been part of the issue, right? That we need so much more connection, particularly as BIPOC individuals and students, and yet we are so disconnected and we don't have that space. And when we're in an institution that's already predominantly white, in a predominantly white city and state like Oregon is, Portland, Oregon is like literally the whitest state, and Portland is the whitest, statistically the whitest urban area in the United States. So the demographics, not only just in the university itself, but in the area, it's very hard to find and create space for BIPOC individuals on the whole. And so already having that as a complicating factor, and then being in our institution in the middle of a pandemic and further separating us, has posed these extra layers of having to be super intentional. And part of that has been me doing what I can around reaching out and trying to find this balance of not forcing them to be their mentor, right? Like, I don't want to say like, oh, you're a person, you are a BIPOC person, so I have to be your mentor. Like, of course. And that's the balance, because I want to be that. I want to be that, particularly for all of my students, for sure. But particularly for my BIPOC students, because representation matters, connection matters, all of those things are so important. But also wanting to find that balance of reaching out and saying, hey, this is going on. I wanted to check in on you. How are you doing? Do you need some extra support? Would you like to meet? And giving them that space, and me trying to kind of, again, diffuse my own whatever. I don't think that maybe it's ego, I don't know, my own pride of saying like, it isn't about me, right? It's about my students, and saying like, I'm reaching out and saying and offering this to them, and then giving them the opportunity to either accept or decline it, rather than saying, hey, we're having this meeting, why don't you, come to it? Because, I think that that's part of it too, is that I think sometimes there can be that sense of like, oh, I have to participate, or I have to be on this committee, I have to do these things. And so that's been my personal struggle and balance of, how do I create space, hold that space for my BIPOC students by intentionally seeing them and saying, I see you, I see what's going on in our world, I see what's going on in our department, how things, what interpersonal relationships are going on. And I'm here. I want to have this conversation with you. I want to hold space with you. We can be real with each other. You don't have to do the impression management thing with me, because I think that that's the other part, is that so many times, and I'll have these conversations with my students, and at the end they'll be like, oh, I did really good, I didn't cry, or I wasn't too upset. And I was like, and this has happened multiple times with my BIPOC students, and I was just like, you know what, like, you do not have to hold yourself. You do not need to code switch with me. You do not need to filter your emotions. You do not need to, this is a space for you to just talk and to just be. You do not have to be professional in this space. And part of that holding space, I think, for them is, as I'm learning, is I have to put that out there up front, because they have learned a way of being, particularly in predominantly white spaces, that they have to present a certain way when they're talking to their faculty, that they have to act a certain, they have to talk a certain way. And so many times when I've given them that feedback of, you don't be angry, it's okay to yell. You can curse. I know we're a Christian school, but do what you need to do. Have this space. And I'm not going to be offended. I'm here to hold this with and for you. That I've heard so much of my students just feeling so validated because they've felt like they've had to change who they are, how they communicate, what they wear, how they wear their hair in order to be considered professional or to feel like they're heard in the spaces. And so I think for me, it is the reaching out, offering the space, not forcing it on them, but also setting the frame of telling them, this is a sacred space. You don't have to code switch. You don't have to be professional. You don't have to be anything but yourself in this space.
Yeah, thanks, Amber. I have similar is, in creating the space is inviting into the space, right? And sometimes it's hard for students, like, I don't want to bother you, you're too busy kind of, message that I get. And so to reach out sometimes intentionally to find out, how are you doing? Let's talk, just checking in, or, thought of you today, whatever it is. That means like, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm not invisible. And, I wish I did better with that, but that to me is how I create space. And when you build that relationship, then I find that they'll be sharing what is really going on and how they're doing, not the, oh, well, I'm getting A's, I'm good, kind of answer. But, I was able to have some conversations, earlier this year, just of really just how affected people are about what was happening in the from George Floyd on, right? And being able to say it's okay to hurt, it's okay to not be okay, so to speak, and give that freedom, like, you're going to be okay, and there's some leniency in our coursework for that, because emotional sometimes is as hard as physical in terms of processing, right? Even harder, I think, sometimes, because I can't point to my leg and go, that's what's hurting. I'm hurt every day when I interact in this society kind of experience. So building relationships and listening. And we as counselors are, taught listening skills, but not try to answer, I know everything because I've read and I know this is what you need. No, everyone is unique and different, and being able to hear what they need and then be able to, as much as I can, provide that for them, for their safety and growth and mental mental self-care, shall I say, for self-care. I'll just say self-care total, not just mentally.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So that really gives a good segue into finding spaces of support, BIPOC faculty, finding spaces of support. You said, Dr. Suarez, to give support as much as I can, which says I have to recognize my own limits and need support myself, right?
Which, I think is, as you said, Dr. Sutherland, it is so incredibly important. I know at baseline, but particularly when we're managing a lot, and we're managing a pandemic, and we're managing all of these new things, it can be really easy for us to not hold space for ourselves, and to put the blinders on and dive so into our work and holding space for our students that we completely lose ourselves, right? And I know for me, one of the things right after George Floyd, I was incredibly overwhelmed. I don't know how you all experienced that, but I was I was angry and overwhelmed. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was isolated. I had just moved back, so didn't even have like a physical community yet, and I just didn't know what to do. And And it wasn't until I decided I have to just cold call folks. I literally sent an email out and went through the directory at my university and like found the other Black folks. There aren't a whole lot of us in my university. And I went through the directory and I sent this email and said, hey, we need each other right now. Can we, like, if anybody else is feeling this way, let me know and I'll set up a Zoom meeting. Like, I know I'm a psychologist, but I'm not facilitating a space right now. I'm not saying like, I'm gonna be the one helping us. I'm saying I need this. If you need this, let's come and talk to each other. And that space with my colleagues, faculty, administrators, coaches, staff in our university in particular, was such a healing space. And the shift that we all felt, even just our own tensions, not that the university was doing anything specific, but just those internal tensions that had already been there, but just brewed to the surface and were just so hard to manage. All of a sudden, what became shared burden, and it became shared experience, and it became validated. And we started not feeling gaslighted, you know, again, not necessarily specifically by the university or anyone, but the general experience. And how I just saw all of our moods and our mental health and our ability to manage shift. And we have our group text that we use now, and that we try to meet regularly, and we have conversations, and how much that has meant for us, again, particularly a predominantly white everything institution area, how meaningful that was. But the sense of being able to have shared burden, and that it's no longer just on me, but we can collectively hold this. And so I think that's my encouragement, is to find how do we do that, even if that is reaching out, cold calling. Hey, you know, we have not talked before, but I see you. Let's talk, let's have a conversation, let's meet, because how fruitful and meaningful that can be. I was listening to a podcast by Brene Brown, and it wasn't about race or anything, but it was about the pandemic and everything that's going on. And she talked about this idea of gap plans, of in relationship, we think of 50% in relationships, and that we can't always bring 50% in relationships. Sometimes we only have 10%. And what does it mean for your partner or whoever you're in relationship with, to talk about, like, can we meet each other where we're at? And what do we need to do in order to make the difference? I'm at 10%, what are you at? I'm at 50%. So we're at 60%, we have a 40% miss here. What do we need to do in order to support that 40% that we're not quite at? And while she was talking about it in partnership, I've been using it a lot about community, of using our community and those shared spaces as a place to have shared burden, to use that as our gap plan. I can come into the space and say, y'all, I don't have it in me today. My tank is completely empty. I need some support. And then my community can say, like, hey, we got you. Like, maybe not all of you are at 100%, but between, you know, amongst us, we can get us to 100% or functioning enough. And that's what it means to me. And finding that, like I said, for me, it was even just cold calling and identifying folks and setting up a meeting so that we could connect.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And, you know, as you were talking, the thing that came to me, even though we're done with in a sense of talking about just holding space for diverse students, our doing that and letting our BIPOC students know that we're doing that models what they need to be doing as well in the spaces where they are. right? And so when we can't provide what they need because we ourselves have hit a limit, they still can have that student community if they've done it. And that's especially true at a predominantly white institution, that they do need to, right? And so as faculty, I know for me, creating that space for them to go to. We are such a small university and we don't have like student organizations and things like that that are set up. And so there was a need to create that on my end so they could go to that, right, and find that space for them. And so, you know, it translates from faculty finding those spaces for themselves and shows our students how to find those spaces for themselves as well. Yeah.
You know, I agree with what's been said in terms of creating space and allowing us to not be okay all the time, as Amber was saying, because it, you know, yes, I'm here for the students and my colleagues and peers, but I also am affected by this and need support and get weary. I'll talk about that later, but get weary of continuing to bring up the same issues over and over and not being heard. And sometimes saying, I'm just exhausted. I'm just exhausted. I want to put down my shield, my sword, whatever I'm fighting with, and just cry, you know, and is that okay? It's, you know, am I seen as weak? Am I, you know, those are the questions that come up for me.
And I would add to this piece of holding space for support. I came into the field of counseling through the substance abuse specialty area. I did a lot of substance abuse work early on. So I conceptualized a lot of things from a prevention perspective, an intervention / treatment perspective, and a relapse prevention perspective. So when I think of holding space of support, I've already established my support. They're always there, right? I have a group of individuals that will call me out if I ain't doing what we said we were going to do. I'm not acting right, right? So they're already there, right? And then if something comes up and I need quote unquote treatment or intervention, I know where to go, right? Or they know where to go. And then the relapse prevention, if I go there, right? If I fall off the track, so to speak, for whatever reason with what's going on, I have support that will pull me back, that will get me what I need to get back on track. So particularly with everything that's going on now, it's significantly important, and I know Dr. Suarez is going to talk about this piece a little bit later. And an example of this, what we're talking about, holding space for support, really played out when George Floyd was murdered. We've all talked about this. This isn't new. It's been happening before. You know, the response, everything, but we all collectively can agree that particular incident, when it happened, for me, and I'm speaking as a 15-year vet, I was a combat medic, all right, 3 tours. So I've seen a lot of stuff. There was something about watching his death that did something to me physically, spiritually, emotionally. And I was so glad that I had a preventative model of support set up, because that told me I need to, before I go to do the work, I need to step back and I need to mourn and I need to grieve. Because this is a symbol of all this that has been happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to do that. And I did for about a week. I didn't do anything. I connected with, my family and close, but I didn't do anything. And I recognized I needed to do that before I re-engaged. Because I cannot be as effective if I'm wounded. And the fact of the matter is, we're wounded. I think we're wounded all the time.
Yeah. Mm.
But being able to recognize, all right, I need to step back. And collectively, there's enough of us that we should be able to step back once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Smith, one of the things I think happens, or has been happening for me, then I'll just own this, is that my margins are thinner, going through this pandemic and with all that's been happening in our world, that it's harder for me to hold that without help. Whereas in the past, I've been able to, okay, take a breathe, but now I'm just like, I almost don't recognize myself sometimes, and just because I realize I'm like, that's driving me crazy. Well, that's been around for a while, but I just don't have any margins or large enough margins as I used to.
And you're absolutely correct. I think the difference now is I've given myself permission. My support group, we've given ourselves permission to say, yes, you know what? That hurts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not good.
Yeah.
This is what I need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think too, Dr. Suarez, your point about having thinner margins, interestingly, it seems that would not be the case with everyone being home or quarantined for such long periods of time, that we wouldn't have such thin margins, when in fact what you're saying is exactly what I've experienced as well. And I think that also plays into this conversation about holding space for support, creating your own margin and being intentional about it, and holding sacred your space that you need, that we need, right? Which means for all of us overachievers, saying no sometimes, right? And pulling back and stopping work at 5 o'clock, even if you're working from home, and then going on a walk to say, this is my commute. I'm shutting down my desk and I'm walking outside. That's my commute to end the day type of deal, right?
I call it I'm walking to work.
Yes.
I go out for a walk in the morning because I'm walking to work, and then I walk back home.
Yes. And in those ways, we hold space for ourselves and support ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, yeah. My office used to be 15, 20 minutes away. Now it is 50 steps away.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Can't really decompress in 50 steps.
Not unless you intentionally do it.
Right.
And find a way to do it. Yeah. So that could take us into how to maintain passion for the work. So let's go there. That seems like a next natural step to talk about.
For me, when I hear that is, even though we've talked about some battle wounds that have happened or continue to happen, how hard it is to stand, and especially when Dr. Smith was talking, and Dr. Nelson, about predominantly white institutions, the image that I got as I was thinking about this is that the room where the decisions are being made, I'm not invited into, right? I'm knocking, I'm not. And I'm basically told to go back to my office and do my little, my teaching, you stay right there. Don't try for more than what we see you as. And yet I have to go back and realize, no, I need to continue to knock. I need to continue to bring these issues up. And I need to find a way to be able to be the voice. When I've been at predominantly white institutions, and when you're one of two, people, BIPOCs, it's like, it's easy for them to go, oh, that's just your issue, and not ours. And I have in the past said, okay, then there's no room for my voice here. But I want to say that even when I'm told to leave, you're not welcome here, I have to hear it as you're not welcome here yet. But that I need to keep knocking and be persistent and continue to, in compassionate ways, explain why it's important for me or somebody else, another BIPOC person, to be in that room, making those decisions, and realizing that we won't always win the battle, but I want to win the war. So just to start that discussion that way, I mean, that's how I've been thinking about it. And it's tiring. I mean, I hinted at this earlier. It's exhausting. Like I said, I've been in the field for almost 25 years, and trying to see change and trying to be the change, the agent of change, and challenging thinking that gets stuck in the majority culture, in the Caucasian, for me, it's been a Caucasian culture of, this is the way we've always done it. Why would we change? And wanting to go lick my wounds, so to speak, and just go, I just can't do this anymore. And yet realizing that the impact of not doing it is going to be greater than some weariness on my part. So what, comments from my team here?
I think I'm, again, still early career, but I experiencing the weariness nonetheless. And I think that for me, it definitely has been trying to figure out that balance of sustainability and what is continuing to knock and continuing to push and continue to hold that, while also finding the balance for myself of not going so hard so quickly that I lose steam and I burn out. And that balance, I'm still learning and I'm still trying to find, because I think I tend to have a systems perspective, and I try to think of systems, institution systems as dinosaurs, and they do turn, but it just takes a really long time for them to turn, in comparison to us who are sitting there and we're like, come on. And they're like, well, we are turning. It's just, the incremental changes. And so I've been part of my institution. I did all my education there. So I've been part of it since 2004. And so being able to experience it now as faculty and seeing the demonstrable changes that they had now in comparison to where they were at 2004 is incredible. And also holding that students are needing and wanting change to happen like this. And that's the part I think that I'm trying to find the balance of like, I hear you, and we are going to continue to make mistakes, and this is going to continue to be messy, and this is not going to be pretty. And here are the things that are changing. And I think that balance of saying like, man, I actually am seeing heart change. I actually am seeing desire for this, but the reality of the changes happening in a way that's meaningful for those who are participants in the system, it doesn't match up. And that gap is a hard place for me to sit in as faculty, of being able to maintain the passion and like, yes, I see it, it's slow, but that's something we can work with. I can work with this and I'm excited about that. But then also on the student end of holding the disappointment and the anger and the frustration that change isn't happening. And it's not fair for me or for us to say what we hear all the time, which is be patient, right? It's not fair for me to say that because we hear that all of the time. And yet there's also this juxtaposition of, and it also takes so much time. And so I think that that's the part for me that gets weary. It's not even just the persistence that it requires, but it's the persistence that it requires and the amount of time it takes in comparison to what the students actually need, right? And it does help me stay passionate and stay on and wanting to fight the good fight, because I can't give up, because I see that the students need, even in the midst of change, slow change, there are still things that are harming students. There are still things the students are experiencing, even when the intention is good, even when there's so much that is actually changing and trying and really trying to do, we're still harming students. And the way that I keep talking about it is that we have to dismantle the system, because the system is the Brita filter, and all of the good intentions in the world filtered through a system is always going to operationalize as oppression and as harmful. And dismantling a system that has been established for so long takes an incredible amount of time, and we can continue to communicate our good intentions. But the passion, again, for me, is recognizing it takes so much time. I have to work on our system to dismantle the change and to be that gap and that continue to hold that space for our students while we're messy and making change and knowing that they're still going to be harmed, even with all of the good intention and attempts on this end.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're describing the reality of the marathon when sprinting is desired by a lot of our students, right? It reminds me of conversations I've had with students where we end up talking about learning how to be strategic in your thinking and your action around what you do, so that you don't burn out and so that you do maintain the passion, so that you have expectations that are not so unrealistic that they push you down when those expectations aren't met, right? And it's just the difference between knowing when your role is and your goal is laying groundwork and when you're on a hill that you have to die for, right? Because it's not always a hill that you have to die for, right? You don't have to die on a hill every day, not necessarily, right? And so you really just have to think strategically and be able to see the long game and what are the things that need to happen in that long game before you get to the hill that you're going to eventually die on, right? And that sometimes has been a really helpful perspective for them when they're dealing with frustration that something is not the way that they want it to be, right? And it gives them visibility of how they can have agency, I guess, right? Even in the midst of not being able to see the change that you want in the immediate, but here's what I can do in the meantime. And it's not meaningless. It's important work that I can kind of contribute to, right? And so that's kind of how I tend to try to manage battle fatigue related to frustration about the pace of things and the walls that I seem to keep hitting sometimes that I thought I had already broken through or dismantled. It's like, what? You still here? I thought I dealt with you already, right? And no, it was just right. So it's not easy. It's up and down. I think it goes back to also having that support, right? How you deal with battle fatigue also rests in how much support you have surrounding you, how much you choose to get to garner support from people in the work and sometimes not in the work.
Right.
You know, Dr. Sutherland, you mentioned the wall, and sometimes I think of it as just chipping away bit by bit. That it's not gonna, I'm not coming with a hammer and smacking it down. That would be nice. But a lot of times it's a little chip here, a little chip there, a little chip there. And I remember you talked, Amber, about turning, what was what you said, turning around a
dinosaur.
A dinosaur. And what my dean said was, it's like turning a cruise ship. You can't do that fast. But then, you know, I'm like, okay, but we're having the same conversation every year. You know, when is it going to change? I mean, can we start turning, you know, even if we haven't gone all the way around?
And in the meantime, we're not actually on a cruise ship. It's not fun.
And not all dinosaurs are safe, so.
Yeah, it's and I appreciate this dialogue, this question so much. And for me, going back to that prevention, treatment / intervention and relapse prevention model, for me, it's wellness. It's wellness, it's wellness, and wellness of self. So again, for me, I tap into my spirituality and religion. All right, that needs to happen. I tap into my mindfulness. What is it that what is it that I am very much mindful of? What's going on for me physically, emotionally, environmentally, and what adjustments do I need to make? I need to work out. I need to work out. This pandemic has been hell. I'm just putting it out there because I work out at least 5 times a week, at least. So it's been very difficult to maintain that level, that intensity during the pandemic. But I need that for my wellness overall and for everyone around me, to be quite honest with you. So there's that physical piece, and then that work leisure, right? That work-life balance. We talked about that already a little bit. We need to be able to leave some stuff alone and play as hard as I work and be intentional, be mindful about that, right? Be mindful about that. And then we talked about the support. So it's friendships, right? Friendships. And for me, I have a lot of acquaintances, right? Very few friends. Very few friends. And in love, all right? Need to have love and those relationships in my life anyway, for wellness, right? For wellness, beyond family, beyond friendship. We need that. Who does not like to be loved? Right? Who does not like that? So for me, those are my go back. That's my prevention. And I try to maintain some level of a balance of tapping into those on a regular basis, a daily basis, a weekly basis, so that I can continue the work. You know, so that I can continue to work. I very much resonated with everything that everyone has said so far, the knock at the door. So I know early in my career, early in life, you knock at the door because you're trying to get in, because you don't know what's going on in the room. Then you actually can see the room, you can see into the room, and you're still knocking at the door, right? So you're like, I really need to get in there because I know what you're doing, because I recognize the system.
Yeah.
You know, part of my work in the counseling world is public policy, the intersection of public policy and mental health. So I really like getting into systems And we've talked about that. The system was set up for a group of individuals in this country, period. And, you know, we're fighting against it. You're exactly right, Dr. Nelson. We can't tell students to be patient. Heck, it's been 400 years. It's been 100 years. It's been 55 years. So the Voting Rights Act, think about this. If nothing else connects this today, we just had an election. The most people that voted ever, which is great. And in spaces where people have never came out to vote, and we're debating votes.
Right.
We're debating votes.
Right.
And it's only been 100 years since women could vote. It's only been 55 years that Black folks could vote.
Mm-hmm.
And in my lifetime, legally, that had to be restored at least 3 times. Because that's not permanent.
Mm.
That's not permanent. I don't know if everyone realizes that.
Mm.
Every so often, the Congress has to give us a renewed right to vote. Think about that. When Martin Luther King was there, when LBJ signed the Voter Rights Act, he was excited about it, but he was very clear. He said, we got pennies on the dollar with this.
Mm.
So it goes back to, for me, what you said, Dr. Sutherland, of changing our mindset from a sprint to a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And doing it collectively. Because not one individual or group of individuals can carry this by themselves. We have to do it collectively. Tap into our skills that come to the table, but we have to do it collectively. You know, so I've changed my language from, you know, they say be patient. You're right, because it hasn't worked. I'm with you on that. All right, it's time. So what's the plan?
Yeah.
Let's look at the plan. Let's evaluate the plan. All right, who do we need to be part of this plan? What skills do we need to implement the plan? And what are the consequences? Because we're all talking about it. It's a lot. There's consequences emotionally. There's consequences physically. There's consequences economically. And those are real. Those are real.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a great segue into our final topic, which is providing consultation. A question that came in from a participant: how do you balance educating for advocacy and activism and asking for a fee to consult or speak or educate or present, which falls into the realm of consultation, regardless of we're talking about non-BIPOC faculty or just in general. Dr. Smith, what are you thinking?
How do I balance it? I will tell you, first of all, being flexible. That's just the first piece, being flexible. And identifying need and spaces. One thing that these 9 months and everything that has happened in it has taught me, it's okay to say no. I didn't create this space and system, and I'm certainly not benefiting from it. So I could put my energy into this, or I can put my energies into that. And that's the flexibility piece. That's the flexibility piece. There has been an increase, and I'm so excited by this. I really am. There's been an increase of BIPOC individuals that are going to seek counseling, right? And the only counseling that they were receiving was in the church on Sunday morning. I mean, let's just be honest. And we know there's a space for that, but we have to go beyond sometimes and get some additional support. So there's been an increase with that. And I've had to say no individually, because if I don't, I'm not going to be good for anyone else. However, collectively, I can call someone, Dr. Nelson, this individual needs some support.
Mhm.
Dr. Suarez, this individual needs support. This community needs some support. Dr. Sutherland, why don't we start doing some groups once a month? Right?
You did just say learning to say no. Right?
But again, I think that's being able to, that support and being able to be flexible and recognizing what are you willing to take on, and being very clear around those boundaries. Literally, really being very clear around those boundaries. And then sticking with the counseling mindset of wellness, and we're learning how to be self-sufficient, right? In our work, our goal is not to keep our clients for the rest of their lives. Our goal is to work ourselves out of a job, right? It's counterintuitive, but I don't want you with me for the rest of your life on the same issue, because something's wrong, something's going on. I'm clearly not helping you. So that's the balance for me. I mean, and is there a clean, clear formula? No, but it's one of those things. I recognize what I'm able to do and provide, and how I'm going to be compensated for it, and making those decisions, and just being clear with individuals, just being very, very transparent and clear with individuals of consultation or not. So
yeah, that's good. You know, and also I think inherent in that question, what I see is this conflict between, but what I'm doing should be a service. Maybe I shouldn't get paid for it, or you know, it's like that. Even sometimes counselors kind of run that line. You know, what I'm doing is a service, so I shouldn't really get paid, or you know, the same way. But I think that it's important for the community, the BIPOC community, but also the external community, to understand the value of what you bring to the table when you are bringing education around advocacy and social justice and racial injustice. And it's not philanthropy.
right.
It's not, right? And so I do think getting out of that mindset of it's advocacy, so it shouldn't, you know, I shouldn't be taking any money for it, or it's activism, so I shouldn't be taking any money for what I'm doing. Well, if you're marching, no. But if you are taking time to train and develop programs, and you know, using skill sets that you have in order to provide information, education, training, or whatever to people that don't, then having a fee to me is appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Otherwise, people don't value what you're bringing sometimes.
Right. Yeah. and in all systems, that's the other piece, right? I think we have we feel a level of, this is just me. I have no evidence, imperial evidence around this, but I think BIPOC folk feel that they have more of a responsibility, right? So asking for a fee or some level of compensation is like, nah, we're supposed to be doing this anyway. So in all systems, because, you know, someone from the church may come in and say, hey, can you do this? And it's a church or the school system. There's nothing wrong with, as Dr. Sutherland said, I have a fee. Now, your fee can be flexible, but I have a fee.
Absolutely. My fees for nonprofits are lower than for for-profit organizations. Okay. And I can live with that. I feel good about that.
Right.
But free doesn't happen all the time.
Yep.
Sometimes, but not all the time.
And then I'm just going to play the devil's advocate here. Then how do you, no. Then how do you balance if they are like, well, then we don't want the training because we don't want to pay, and we can pay, I don't know, we can get someone else for free that may not be a person, how do I say this nicely, on the front line. And, you know, so we've lost our chance to be a voice in that system.
And that's a great question. One thing, my mother has accused me of a lot of things. My friends have accused me of a lot of things. My colleagues have accused me of a lot of things. Not having a voice
It's not one of them.
is not one of them.
We have a hard time believing that. I don't see that at all.
So my response to that is great. And
you let it go.
I let it go. I mean, you know, I have to tap into my spirituality, my religion. What did Jesus say? Hey, if you want to learn, if you want to learn about me and my Father, let's sit down and have a conversation. If not, hey, good luck to you. I wish you the best.
Yeah.
Time for me to move on.
This is a good conversation for me as an early career person, because this is a balance that I personally have been trying to navigate, because in the midst of this, all that the last 9 months have been, and especially being in a predominantly white area, the requests for me to come and speak and talk and do training and education with systems has exponentially grown, from churches to police departments to hospital systems, and trying to figure out, I had nothing set up because that's not something that I have done necessarily outside of my training. So when I was faculty at a clinical faculty at Hopkins, you know, I did those kinds of things. I did didactics for the medical residents and for the trainees, and so I would get asked within the system to do those things. So I've done it. It's not like I've never done it before, but to be asked outside when that hasn't really been my role is new. So I had nothing set up, and trying to find that balance of like, oh, I probably should be getting paid for this, right? Like, I didn't even, like, it wasn't even something that I had really even been considering, because it's a passion of mine. It's something that I love to talk about. I want to see the change in systems. And so my heart in that service piece that you all talked about, right? My heart is for it. And so my instinct was like, yes, please, like, I'd love to do it. And then this afterthought of like, you're a huge institution. I probably I probably should have worked something out here or asked for something, or I should be thinking about this ahead. And now I'm kind of going back and trying to establish myself and a website and some fees. But the way that I've been kind of resolving it for myself is that part of my kind of philanthropy, or my, giving back to the community and doing those for free, was that I also was the benefit for me was also building a relationship with these systems. And now I'm being asked to come back. Now I'm being asked to do series. Now I'm being asked to do these things, and I can have and negotiate compensation and talk about what it's going to look like from here on out. And it's also, it's mutually beneficial in that way, that I, not only am I getting compensated for it now, but now I have this established relationship with this system, that they've gotten a taste of what I have to offer and how I do things. And they want more, because they know that one conversation isn't enough. 1 hour of just having this conversation is not sufficient in order for them to do what they want to do or to make those changes. And now they're inviting me back, and now they're having me do larger trainings and to do more specific consultation for their systems, rather than just kind of a blanket conversation or a blanket presentation. And so that's where I'm finding the balance, at least for me, of finding, like, if I do a small thing that maybe I'm not requiring a fee or a large fee for, but this is going to be a foot in the door where I'm actually building. It's not only am I giving back to the community or the system, but it's a foot in the door where I'm building relationship. That's beneficial to me. And that's compensation to me, even if I don't get paid. But now I have this, my students can use the relationship for their research. We can have this relationship from a research perspective, that there can be different ways of how I'm understanding my compensation too, is kind of, again, me being early and it being an afterthought of now kind of how am I going to be intentional about building that first, especially if I do something short to begin with, how am I going to build this as a relationship that can be beneficial and a compensation to me, regardless of whether or not it's monetary.
I think a lot of us start there, right where you said, exactly where you said. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. So it's good, because now we can see how there are multiple options that can be exercised.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. We do have a question from someone, so I will ask this question. As a professor, how do you advocate for collaboration training with community stakeholders of color within the university setting? So I'm not 100% sure what's meant by collaboration training.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was stuck at.
I'm thinking that it's bringing in community people to do the training together with me at the university. That's how I'm reading that.
Okay, so how do you advocate within your university to join with community partners and collaborate on training, meaning bringing our expertise and adding it to their expertise and offering that within the university? Yeah.
Well, remember I said, what's your plan? We're talking about what's your plan. So what's the plan, right? What's the plan? And what I mean by that is, what is the goal? What is the purpose of what you want to achieve? All institutions of higher ed, whether it be a 2-year, 4-year, public, private, small, large, have a mission statement of connecting with community. That's where we start, period. And no one's going to debate over that. It's about resources. Let's be honest. It's about resources and financing. That's the bottom line. How much is it going to cost? Okay. Now we can do some legwork by seeking out resources. But again, what's the plan? Your involvement in this as a faculty member, will it help you for tenure? Will it help you for promotion? Will it help you with your research? Are you being compensated? Will you be able to develop relationships? So that's what I mean by what's your plan. There's a lot of leverage that faculty bring when in institutions. All right. Now, I think more than for a long time, the time's right to be, because they're asking as well. They're asking as well.
Yeah. I think too, at our university, which is a predominantly white institution, this idea of bringing in community stakeholders of color is in part because, one, we don't have those resources outside of myself and one other gentleman at all. And then as well, because we're a Christian university, there is this thing about just making sure that we're vetting who we're bringing in from the community. Our mission is our mission. And so whatever it is that we do within the university does need to align. And so any community stakeholders that we bring in also, whatever they present would need to, in some ways, align with our mission. And at the same time, being able to identify spaces where the mission is limiting and potentially oppressive. And how you balance then bringing in community stakeholders to address some of that in a way that's helpful and eye-opening, as opposed to conflict generating, or so that will shut down the conversation at the end of the day. So sometimes it definitely helps, as Dr. Suarez is saying, to do it collaboratively. I definitely agree. Yeah, I definitely agree. We are trusted by the university, and so when we can do that with them, and then it generates the relationships that Dr. Nelson was talking about, right?
You're the bridge. You become the bridge to that community partner, and I'm okay being used that way because I'm in this situation, and if I can be the introduction of those two entities because of my connection, so let's use it.
Yeah. I was gonna say us doing the legwork, right? Not just doing like, oh, maybe we should have somebody from the community be part of this, but us actually doing the legwork and saying like, I know this person, or I've watched them, this was really good. And us being, like you said, vouching for them, being that bridge, that part of that, getting the university to collaborate with the community is also us recognizing the value and seeing the need and doing the legwork to actually get them to the table. If we're really saying that we want this, us just paying lip service isn't enough, that we actually have to be on the ground and saying like, hey, I'm bringing this person here. Can we invite them to the table because they could speak to what the ethos of our university, the tone of what we're talking about right now. This person can really speak into that. I think that means is really meaningful. And I think that Dr. Suarez, you're right, that our universities trust us as faculty. We met with the president, we met with the dean, we met with all of the people. They have vetted us. And if we are saying this person would fit and would be somebody that can speak uniquely to our community right now as a bridge to the larger community in which we're housed, I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And as faculty, and I didn't get this till about 5 years in to the academy. So maybe esteemed colleagues got it sooner, but I'm slow. It's probably about 5 years in, it clicked. I recognized that as a faculty member, I am that institution's, that program's biggest recruitment and retention mechanism. And how will I use that? How will I use that?
Yeah. Yeah. We have another question as well, and we'll wind up on this one. What is one thing you'd like your white or majority colleagues to know or do to support BIPOC faculty in our settings? What is one thing you'd like your white or majority colleagues to know or do to support BIPOC faculty in our settings?
I want to say something that sounds so simple, but it's hard to do, and that is listen to them. Instead of deciding what you think they need, is to listen to what they are saying and they need and what they're expressing. And when I say listen, I mean actively listening without interrupting, actively trying to understand and not, oh, yeah, I know, because I knew someone else that was Latina and that's what she needed. But because everyone's unique. So that's my simple answer.
I would 100% agree. And I think on that too, of holding yourself back enough from trying to be helpful and jumping into like, oh, I'm going to use my privilege and power in this way. But part of it, yes, do that. Yes, be supportive. Yes, use your power and privilege, but in a way that that faculty wants and needs. That's the part of the listening, is not to just saying, I'm going to do this for you, but saying, is that actually what they want and what we need? It may not. We may just need you to be like, I just need you to see me. I'm tired. Like, please that's all I need from you, right? I don't need you to like take this off my plate, or maybe I do, but I think just the listening, the active listening is huge. And also like stopping yourself from the need to like try to fix or try to do something that's not necessarily what your faculty or your colleague necessarily needs. And so I think that balance is really meaningful.
There's a fine balance with taking away power from me versus advocating for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah.
And I would say the final thing as we really wind down, we've got like, I guess, 30 seconds, is do your own work and be ready as a way of getting ready to be of help, right? Your own self-awareness of your own bias, your own racism, race-related stereotypes. What is your journey towards anti-racism looking like? Are you on a journey? What are you doing? And doing that on your own says a lot to a BIPOC faculty down the road, because now you have context for conversation and they hear it and they can see you as a potential ally because you're doing the work independent of asking them, what do I do? Will you educate me? Will you, right? So I think in addition to all of that, just doing the work, continuing, and knowing that it is a journey that does not end.
And,
for any of us.
It's fair that we're all still on that journey
For
too.
any of us, exactly.
It's not because, because of my ethnicity that I have arrived and you have to come to me, that we are all on our journey.
Yeah.
Doing our own work.
Yeah. Thank you for your questions. They're really helpful, really insightful questions, and hopefully we provided some perspectives that were helpful for you. Thank you for being here as well. Dr. Nelson and Dr. Smith and Dr. Suarez, thank you for your wisdom and everything that you contributed to our panel. We invite you who are listening to look out for the next in the series, which is in January. You'll get information on that in the coming weeks as well.